in many respects, the backbone of this country's economy. Again, we're going to hear from three brands that are doing exactly that. You're going to witness firsthand a backbone, because that's exactly what they are. I've been covering the branding industry for well over 30 years. I'm steeped in this business, and I know the power and the influence that a brand can bring to society for a host of different reasons. But let's focus on one right now, and that's jobs. That's absolutely critical. So I want to welcome all of you. I don't know where you are, nationwide, I hope, globally, possibly, that would be nice, to this web meeting where you're going to hear firsthand from brands at the coalface, local brands who are powering ahead, making a difference, doing something important. Why are we doing this today? I want you to learn from people, and when I do the round table a little bit later on, I'm not going to focus necessarily, and here's a clue for some of our participants, I'm not going to focus just on the positive. I want this to be a learning experience. I want people to understand where they have made the mistakes, but how they have fixed those mistakes. That is absolutely critical. I'm looking forward to that. I've spent, as I say, many years covering the brand industry. And before I introduce our first speaker, I thought maybe a very, very quick story that will end with a quote. It's about the night that I spent with Sir Richard Branson. Don't get the wrong idea. I was very fortunate a couple of years ago to be part of an anniversary flight from OR Tambo to London Heathrow on board one of his aeroplanes. And it was an anniversary flight, and I happened to have the first class pod next to Sir Richard. Had an interesting interview with him. But I was scrolling back through the interview in preparation for our discussion today. And this is what he said to me, and I think it's a valuable lesson for anybody who is talking about brands. He told me that branding demands commitment. Commitment to continual reinvention, striking chords with people to stir their emotions, and commitment to imagination. He went on to say, it's easy to be cynical about such things, but it is much harder to be successful. And I sincerely hope that that sets the tone for a robust session, which will run through until about 1 o'clock this afternoon. So let's get things started. I want to, first of all, cross remotely to Eustace Mashimbe, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Proudly South African, who are hosting this web meeting today to set the scene as we talk about the power, the efficacy of brands, and just how important, never, ever more important than right now, to focus inwardly, to be looking at the importance of buying South African brands. Eustace, good morning to you.
Facilitating this program for us. As introduced, a very good introduction, and I'm meant to take everyone through what Iceland is about, what we stand for, and why we use such a platform to help our drive to support the SMEs and to ensure that brands and products that come out of this country, and to ensure that they are online for those who in that country. Look at China. And China has positioned themselves as a factory for the world, as an R&D hub for the world. And if a product is made anywhere in the world, whether they consume it as the Chinese or not, they're going to make sure that they produce the product. And that speaks to the ethos and the values and the benefits of having a heavily industrialized economy, that you are able to then have jobs for as many of the people living in that country. So with a population of 1.4 billion rands, look at the graph, it keeps going down, and the unemployment rate is 3.67. But look at the numbers I was talking about with respect to South Africa. Unemployment rate of 30.1%, 7.1 million people were unemployed as per the data that came out for the quarter ending March 2020. And if you add the 2.9 people who are discouraged from work, you have 10 million people. And now we know that we've added another 2.2. Some are saying 3 million people added to the unemployment number or during the COVID-19 period. And so we're looking at in excess of 12 million people who are unemployed in a country with only 59 million people. Remember the number I gave you for the US? 329 million people living in the US, but only 5.9 million of them unemployed. Look at us, 59 million people, but in excess of 12 million of our people are unemployed. Quick examples of how reindustrialization can assist an economy in terms of absorbing as many of its people into jobs. Look at the furniture industry. It used to have 3,500 factories making furniture in this country. That has dropped to 2,200 factories in 2018. And so in terms of number of jobs, that economy used to, or that industry used to have about 50,000 direct jobs in that industry. And we're now sitting with about 26,000 jobs. So half of those jobs have been lost. And these are just the direct jobs. If you look at the indirect jobs, you used to have, if you look at these industries that feed into that specific industry, 25,000 jobs lost directly, but look at the indirect jobs that are lost, because all these industries are part of that value chain. So when you think of jobs and supporting any industry, think of the entire value chain. And I think this illustration of the furniture industry gives you a good sense that the plastics industry contributes synthetic fibers. The agricultural industry contributes natural fibers and hides, and these are converted into textiles and leather items that are used by furniture manufacturers. The metal industry contributes metal parts, and these are used by furniture manufacturers in making furniture items that we buy, whether in the private sector, in the public sector, or as ordinary consumers. Look at what the chemical sector provides in terms of paints and adhesives. All these industries, whether it's sawmills and board millers or mills and everyone else who feeds into that value chain. Every time we buy imported products, jobs are lost directly in the furniture manufacturing company itself, but also across all these industries that are part of the value chain. Look at the clothing, textile, footwear, and leather industry. We used to have about 1,600 factories making these items. That dropped to 900 factories within a 20-year period. And the reason for that is what you see on the right-hand side of the screen, where you've had 480% increase in imports. But look at the imports from China, 730% increase in products coming in from China into South Africa. And in terms of number of jobs, direct jobs, same example as what we had with furniture. We used to have about 200,000 jobs coming from the clothing and textile industry. And now we're just looking at between 90,000 to 100,000 jobs in that industry. And so as Party South African, our responsibility is to focus on these 4 areas, which is public sector procurement, educating those in the public sector or in government and in all state entities on the importance of buying local and complying with the legislation that is in place with regards to local procurement in government, to ensure that government buys locally made products, to engage the private sector on the need for the private sector to also come to the party in terms of ensuring that they support small businesses, they support the brands, they support the products that are made in South Africa, and to educate the general public about the economic impact of buying locally made products, as well as to increase the access of those locally made products by those who make purchasing decisions. And so in order for you to benefit from the programs we have, you have to become a member of Proudly South African. And one of the ways in which consumers can then identify whether a product is made in South Africa or is a member of Proudly South African and has gone through our checks and balances is for them to look out for the Proudly SA logo. And so every time you come across a product that carries the Proudly South African logo, you know that it conforms with these 4 key criteria. The first one being local content, simply meaning that the product itself is locally made and that where the raw materials used that are available in the country, they are sourced locally, and that the value chain that benefits is a South African value chain, that there are industries that are part of that production of that product that are benefiting from the making of that product, even if it's components that are brought in from outside to help assemble a technology product or similar, that those components, even if they are sourced from outside of the country, that they are assembled into the final product within the borders of South Africa. And that's the first thing. So we give consumers a guarantee that the product has indeed contributed to the creation of jobs and is made in South Africa. Second thing is that the product must be of a high quality nature, and in that regard has to comply with whatever is prescribed as standards for that product in that industry. The last two are that companies that affiliate with us have to ensure that they comply with the environmental practices of the country and that they comply with the labor legislation that is available for companies and those doing business within South Africa. So implement fair labor practices. There is perception that membership of Parley South African is for the elite and is expensive. It's not the case. Companies and SMMEs with turnover between 0 and 1 rand rather, and 5 million rand only have to pay 500 rands per annum. And those with turnover between 5 million and 10 million only have to pay 1,000 rands. We have significantly reduced these fees back in 1 April 2017 in order to ensure that we make it affordable for as many companies as possible to benefit from this the Buy Local program. And so, as you see on the screen, those are the fee. That's the fee structure, and those are the options that are available to everyone. So the use. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback. So the benefits includes the use of the Parley SA logo, as well as access to market platforms for those who are members of Parley South African, and this includes access to markets that are in the public sector and markets that are in the private sector, as well as ensuring that those who make purchasing decisions on a day-to-day basis consider locally made products when making purchasing decisions. And so we look at what is prescribed by government, and I'll rush through this because I'm almost out of time, is that government has prescribed legislation that says if they buy any of these products that you see on the screen, they are meant to buy them from companies that are going to supply them with locally made products. And so whether it's number 5, which is textile, clothing, leather, and footwear, government buys uniforms and linen and carpets and curtains and anything else that they need that forms part of that broader industry, they have to buy it locally. Look at number 8, furniture. Look at wheelie bins that are bought by municipalities. Look at transformers, which is number 14. So all these items, even the trains, rail rolling stock, is all your locomotives, whether diesel, electronic. So if government buys any of these products, they have to ensure that they buy them locally. And so the role of Parley South African is to ensure that we integrate our database of companies that affiliate with us with the central supply database of government. So anyone who joins Parley South African and indicates that they want to do business with government as at the time when they join, because we do ask those questions, they are then, the details are then integrated into the CSD, because you know that you can't do business with government if your company is not registered on the central supply database. And so government has designated the 23 items that I've showed you. In fact, the list has now grown to 27. So they then issue tenders for those items. And every time the tenders are issued, we have a tender monitoring system where we track tenders issued for all those items. And so we track tenders for designated items in order to make sure that we check together with the DTI whether the tender that is issued for furniture or for transformers or wheelie bins or any of those items that are designated has those provisions that will exclude imported products, and we'll just consider locally made products when considering the bids. From those tenders that we pick up through our tender monitoring system, and we then take those. If it's a tender for furniture, as an example, we'll then send it to all our furniture manufacturers to say, here's an opportunity in government for you to respond to the tender. This helps government intervene and correct the tenders where they're not compliant, because then in our conversations with government through the GTI, we are then able to get those entities to correct the tenders if the provisions that are required are not there. Lastly, this enables government to buy from local producers, and that's the intention. behind the tender monitoring system. In the private sector, we have a base of companies that are vetted for quality and local content as per our criteria. And so what we've introduced is a process of soliciting localization commitments from the private sector. So a quick example is where we say we're going to offer furniture to the guys in the financial services or banking industry. They will give us a commitment as a bank, and based on that commitment, they will identify items. So we went to the banks and we said, can you identify items that you want to give us localization commitments for? 2 of the major banks gave us a commitment to buy furniture locally. We then are going to work with them as they issue the tenders. We are going to, for the procurement opportunities for furniture, we are going to identify in our books those companies that are in a position to can respond to the tenders. We will then send that list of companies to the banks, and this will enable the banks and the manufacturers to transact. And our responsibility as Priory South African is then to ensure that we evaluate and monitor that procurement spend to check what the value of the spend is that has been directed as a result of this local commitment made by the banks to local manufacturers, what the impact is in terms of creating jobs and retaining jobs, so that we can then give feedback. Other examples, number 1 is the example I gave now, the banks are going to buy local furniture. Other examples of localization commitments from the private sector includes retailers buying locally made products. It includes those who make products locally, like Coca-Cola and SAB, buying the raw materials locally and supporting small-scale farmers, etc. If you think of a beer product, there's maize, there's barley, there's hops that are required, there's packaging, and there's other raw materials that are required. And as part of these commitments that, for example, SAB and Coca-Cola have given us, they're going to buy all those raw materials from local producers, and that's why SAB is now spending its 7% local content in terms of all their products that are made in South Africa. We also look at those who represent a lot of buying. Franchise Association of South Africa is a good example, where we work with them to say all the franchises that are affiliated with them can then give us commitments to buy from locally made, from local producers, whether they are raw materials or the actual products that they require in the course of doing business. The last element of the work that we do is consumer education, and I'm going to ask the team to play the ad after I'm done. Last 2 slides is we have also introduced an online store which enables every single South African that wants to buy local to easily access those products that are locally made. And so if you go to rsamade.co.za, you're going to find only locally made products vetted by Priory South African and available for anyone who wants to support local made products. My last slide talks to the portals that we've created. We've created portals during this time to enable everyone who's looking for masks, who's looking for sanitizers, who's looking for disinfectants and detergents to easily find those products that are locally made. And so on proudlysa.co.za, you are going to find the COVID-19 portal. As a private sector or as a small business, as a member of the private sector, whether it's a big business or small business, every time you need any of these products, we urge you to go into this portal, buy these products from the portal, because then you know you're supporting these businesses that are making these products, so that we safeguard this market that we know exists for these products for South African producers. And so we're going to do the same with the furniture portal, where all furniture manufacturers will live on this portal. They will have their products there, and purchasing decision makers can then go on this portal to find their suppliers. That's it for me. I ask that the technical team please play the ad. This is an ad that we rolled out between July and August, and that is a campaign that underpins, or that is the ad that underpins the campaign that we are rolling out even for the festive season, where we are urging South Africans to buy local. If you recall what the president said in his speech when he delivered the economic recovery and reconstruction plan, he spoke about the fact that over the next 2 months, there's going to be a festive season campaign ensuring that South Africans, during this time where we know there's a lot of buying that happens, buy locally made products. And so this is the ad that is the backbone of this campaign. It will live on different platforms, on radio, on TV, on digital platforms, and we want every single South African to think local first. And the analogy used is that of a football match, where you know that if your team is not doing well in the first half, during halftime you have to go and regroup. In the second half, you have to come back stronger. And it's the same with the South African economy. We have not done well. The economy was already under pressure, and we were already in recession even before we got into this COVID-19 pandemic period. But what we're asking South Africans to do is to buy locally made products when making purchasing decisions. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much, Jeremy. I'll be available to respond to questions, but I ask that the technical team play the video. Thank you.
The second half is about to begin. We need to change the scoreboard. It's time for all of us to pause and rethink the game plan in order to save the future. I call on all of us to be game changers because greatness isn't reserved only for some people. By buying local, we're choosing to create jobs and sustain the ones we have. Time and time again, South Africans have taken destiny into their own hands, creating products that the rest of the world wanted to buy. See, the world remembers about us, what we sometimes forget. But it's time for change. Let's all buy local. It's game time, Zanzi.
Local is lekker.
Your everyday decisions shape our future.
Thank you, Eustace, and we will see you a little bit later on for the Q&A session. I had no idea that you had created this online shop, and I think that is a clever and a logical extension to the work that Proudly South Africa is doing. And I couldn't help but think as I was listening to you that what you're doing, what Proudly South African is doing, really underpins the way in which the trajectory of brands should be moving forward in a post-COVID environment. It's all about collaboration, about cooperation and integration, and it's important to see that that overview or the umbrella that Proudly South African is putting over that. So that is very, very important. You know, folks, many years ago, I hosted a quiz show on television. And one of the things that I was very, very good at was becoming a sponge for absolutely useless information. And one of the things that I can tell you is that the name Eustace, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Proudly South African, actually means, it has a Greek origin, I'm told, and actually means fruitful and abundant. And I could not think of a better name for someone to lead Proudly South African, because that is something that we all want. We need to be fruitful and abundant, which segues into another very, very quick story. My late father always used to say to me that I should follow his footsteps and go into the bank. Because he said after 30 years, Jeremy, my son, he used to say, you could end up as a branch manager of a bank in Edenvale. And I don't know why he always used to say Edenvale. And no disrespect to the people in Edenvale who are watching us today. But I said to him, Dad, I have no passion for banking. It's a very overtraded word, passion, but I have no passion for banking. And unless you have passion for what you're doing in your professional life, it's pointless. You need to go and find that. And I'm going to introduce you now to someone who has managed to perfect the symbiosis, the coming together of passion for something, but also he's been able to turn it into a profit. I first met him about a year ago on the television program that I do on the media, and I was blown away. I was astonished at his maturity, at his drive and his commitment, but his understanding of situating a brand right in South Africa and making it successful in that particular realm. Sibusiso Ngwenya, also known as Skinny Spoo, is with us today. I'm just looking at it's so nice to see you again. When I saw you last time, you didn't have blue hair. But that's another story. I'm just looking at your resume, and it says here that many Johannesburgers have your company on speed dial. So whenever they go to a red carpet event or a Saturday market or just painting the town red on a Friday night, they will phone you for socks.
Of course.
Pull the other one Seriously? Do people do that? They will phone you on a Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock, I need new socks.
From Musi Maimane to Tumisho Masha, Maps Maponyane, the president himself, Sir Richard Branson, the list goes on.
They phoned you up and they say, I urgently need socks. Middle of the night, and you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Of course. That's the answer I was looking for. Spoo, it's so nice to see you again. I'm such a fan of your brand. I think that you've done such wonderful things. And I think that there are so many lessons that we can learn from you. Just before we start, and before you start telling us your story, situate us very quickly. Tell our audience where we are.
Okay, cool. Right now, we are at Skinny Spoo Studio, which is the back of Skinny Spoo store at the center of the city of gold in Maboneng, Johannesburg. I had this very romantic idea of building a flagship store in Johannesburg, just like my childhood heroes, Tom Ford, Tommy Hilfiger, and Ralph Lauren, who use the same model as me. I use distribution partners to get my product out there, but they have built a multi-million rand flagship store in their regions, and that's what we are doing with Skinny Spoo socks.
So just tell me, are you going to tell us your story, or am I interviewing you? What do you want to do?
I don't know, just anything goes.
Pick it up. How did this start?
Okay, cool. Is my mic on? Do we need to sort it out?
No, mic is fine, I think. You know, I must just tell you, one of the things I love about the way in which we do conferences and seminars in this COVID environment now is previously, if there was a small technical glitch, people would get so upset about these things. I think audiences the world over have come to realize that there's a granularity now, there's a rawness, there's an authenticity towards these kind of things. So if the mic doesn't work, we'll fix it. It's not a problem.
Okay, cool.
Start with, tell us your story. We want to hear.
Oh, that's the story. But 7 years ago, when I started Skinny Spoo Socks, I was super skinny. And I figured, man, I want to build a very cool brand, and I'm going to name it after me. So my name is Spoo, I'm skinny, and I sell socks. When I started Jeremy, at the time, the leaders of this sock revolution was Happy Socks, which is two Swedish guys. They have massive distribution globally. Topon was number 2. Topon is under the Scottish Group. The Scottish Group manages Ben Sherman, Pringle, Palladium, and all these cool brands. So there's a huge organization behind it. And I've been studying these guys, and I said, you know what, I think I have the cool factor and the differentiating factor compared to all these guys. I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna borrow a authentically African and South African aesthetic and put it on my sock. I am an incredible storyteller, and I'm gonna take those stories and put them on my socks. How, you ask? So every collection that we release has a story behind it. But also I figured that like traditional stories of where Africa comes from, they're a bit tired and overused. I wanted to tell stories of an urban South African. I'm a youth. I come from the east of Joburg. I live in the city. I fall in love. I am pursuing my passion. And that was the turn of Skinny Spoo Socks when I started telling stories that everyday urban South Africans started relating to.
Why were you drawn to feet?
At the time, myself and my best friend, Tepo Jean Maker, were attending a lot of Fashion Week. And when you go for a Fashion Week, people are doing apparel, you know? And I said, man, I want to do something different from everybody. And socks made sense. But also, socks is my passion. When I started Skinny Spoo Socks, I collected something like over 100 pairs of socks, different brands, global and local brands. And I wanted to now start focusing on that piece of garment. I'm a student of branding, and I figured it would be so cool for us to have a locally made sock brand.
What is the relationship between a person and their socks?
It's a very personal one, you know. First of all, we sleep on our socks, we watch television, we do every other crazy thing. I don't take off my socks, only except when I'm jumping in the shower, you know. But there's a very personal
Until you make waterproof socks, and then you never have to
I'm
take.
never gonna take off my socks. You know? but there's a very personal relationship between people and their socks. Your socks say a lot about your character, you know. So for example, today this is my Standard Bank look.
Yes.
You know, so if I was working at Standard Bank, I'd look like this going to the office. But the only thing that would show my personality would be my socks, you know. So for me, I figured that like that's the kind of relationship. Socks help people show off their personality as well.
So tell us about the ones that we can see on the screen now.
The ones I'm wearing right now, they're part of our 9 to 5 collection. In 2015, after our CNN fame, we decided to speak to a mass audience, because remember at the time we were talking to a very niche market, sock lovers, you know, and a lot of people were requesting plain socks and requesting socks to go to work. And then we decided to create a collection called the 9 to 5, something that you can rock up to work and something that's acceptable in a corporate environment.
What is the relationship between the sock and the shoe?
You can't wear an expensive shoe and a cheap sock. You know, so your socks most of the time reflect your pockets. If you have money, you're more likely to wear a skinny sock, which retails for something like 150 to 250 a day.
I was rather hoping you weren't going to drop the price just yet. That's a lot of money for a pair of socks, Boo.
We are not hoping. Listen,
Who's the top? Who's our best friend? Right. Who's the target here?
The target is an average South African, funny enough, right? You go to Tsakane, where I come from, a guy whose money is not in the system, who doesn't bank their money, and they make something like 15,000 rands every Friday. Those are the guys who've built the Speeds brand. Speeds started in Carlton Center in the 90s, and their biggest flagship brand is Cavella. Cavella is known throughout the country. That shoe costs something like 3,000 rands. Most people who wear those shoes don't have a car, and they live in a back room. And it's their own piece of saying, I have arrived, or I want to be accepted by a certain clique. It's
the expression of a personal brand, in other words.
It's an expression of a personal brand. So our target market is that individual. Our target market is the new market, which I call the gray market. It's most people who are mobilely upward, who are from the hood, who are working very hard, and now they live in the north, they drive a flashy car, and they still want to show off.
Let's go all the way back to, you were watching different fashion weeks.
Yeah.
It was something that you were driven by. It was an industry that you wanted to break into. How did you do that? Where did you find, you need to find two things. You need to find courage to overcome risk, and you need to find money. How did you do that?
The first one, courage, it was immediately after dropping out of the University of Johannesburg. I'm a politics student, but I was frustrated by being in that environment. So I was basically at my lowest. At home, they kicked me out. So when you are at your lowest, you'd be willing to do anything, even selling socks. I really had no option. At the time, I had what we call like a failed media career, because I came to Joburg to pursue my dream of being a broadcaster and an actor, you know. So I was really.
It's very overrated, eh? There are better things to do, trust me.
Very overrated. No, it's called very overrated. I wanted a lot of money, and I was like, no, business is the answer.
If you want a lot of money, don't get into broadcasting. Keep going, yeah.
I figured I'm going to make a lot of money if there's 50-something million South Africans. So if all of them buy a pair, I'm a millionaire already. So that was my thinking at the time. I got the courage from being an outcast. I was an outcast at school, I was an outcast at home, I was an outcast generally in every environment. And I wanted to build something that
was Malcolm Gladwell would say an outlier.
Yeah. So I figured I wanted to build something that's going to celebrate me. Hence, I went for the skinny part. So I wanted to build something very grand. And I'm one person who invests their all in everything they're doing, you know, and I went all in. How did I get the money? Again, that's when being a student of media came into play. People take for granted publicity. Skinny Spoo Socks is built at the backdrop of Skinny Spoo Socks is publicity. My first time of being on a television was on a global platform. It was on CNN. So how I got money to start the business, my mom invested $70. She gave me $70. I went to a local store.
$70.
Yes.
We're not talking $700 or $7,000 or $70,000. $70.
70.
I mean, you know, in this Maboneng precinct, you can't even get lunch for $70.
Yeah. But she invested $70. She's the best investor in the brand. And I went to a local store. I bought socks that were marked down to R5. I repackaged them with the golden orange string. Remember, I'm a branding guy. So you need
I don't understand when you say you rebrand with a golden orange. What did you do? Was it you created new packaging for the
I
socks?
created a new packaging.
How much did you buy them for?
I bought them for R5.
R5 for how many? Per,
14 pairs of socks.
at R5 each.
At R5 each.
Okay, all right.
And then I took each pair, rolled it nicely, and then took a golden orange string and tied it around the sock. I added value, right? Yes.
Don't look at me.
I added value on the sock. It was a plain, simple a sock that I repackaged.
If you call putting string around a pair of socks adding value, I'm kidding. I understand what you're doing because that's the magic of branding,
That's
isn't
the
it? Yes.
magic of branding.
Yeah.
And immediately after that, but let's get to the big money. When did the business turn? So that was April, going to a local store and packaging it. A year later.
No. You're going too fast. How did you sell those pairs of socks, those 14 pairs of socks that you bought?
You have social media.
Yeah.
This is 2013 right now.
Okay.
Social media is booming.
So I'm not that old. I know what social media is. Yeah.
On Facebook, I had like 5,000 friends, so I started selling to my friends.
What was the markup?
The markup, I sold it for 25 rands, so I made $20 per pair. Smart guy, right?
Of course. And you made and did you move that merchandise quickly?
Yeah, I moved it very quickly. Like
Yeah.
in one night, same night I went to Fashion Week. I gave those pairs to celebrities and we took pictures. So immediately I got free celebrity endorsements. And remember, I've been studying Tom Ford, Tommy Hilfiger, and Ralph Lauren, who spent millions on Hollywood celebrities. And I said, I can take the same model here at home, take a picture with the celebrity holding my sock, and we put it on social media. And to the average guy, that means that Mavs Maponyana wears Skinny Spoo socks, and I'm gonna buy that. And it started from 70 pairs of socks to 100 pairs of socks to 1,000.
But you were still buying the socks at
I was
that
still
point.
buying the socks for a whole year, for
Yeah.
12 months. I'd visit different stores, repackage them. And the turning point was a year later in April 2014, when CNN covered my story and they blasted it across the world.
I remember that well.
Yeah, suddenly guys in China, in Lagos, in Abu Dhabi, and all over the world knew that there's a tall, skinny guy selling socks. And that night, funny enough, every big moment at that time happened when I was a Tempo gin maker, because we were at a club just drinking free alcohol. And a Nigerian friend of mine called me, he said, "Spoo, your brand is about to be big." The following morning at 7 a.m., I was sitting down with multiple investors, not less than 10 investors, who wanted to invest in this sock brand. And that was the turning point for Skinny Spoo Socks.
I'm going to do something in broadcasting which is called breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to directly address our technical team. Guys, this is such a fascinating story. Keep an eye on the clock for me, because all of a sudden it's going to be 6 o'clock this evening and he'll still be telling us about his socks. So give me a wind up when you're ready to go. Okay. So the brand was going to be big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Pick it up from there.
April
Yeah.
2014, I'm hoping this mic is gonna go on. That's why I put it here, but it's the ambience, you know. Okay, cool. So April 2014. April 2014, turning point for Skinny Spoo Socks. A certain gentleman by Nick comes through. I'm 21, and I want to do this thing. It's like, Spoo, I want to invest $1 million. and your business. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do this thing. I found a factory in Cape Town that we're still using 7 years later. And the reason why I'm using this factory, I'll go back to my story, is because I went to visit them immediately after that. And the women work there. Opposite is a squatter camp, opposite the factory. They walk to work. And they said they are grateful for me to be producing my socks there because they're able to feed their families. But not only that, they just enjoy making my socks because they're colorful and interesting designs.
And we saw the unemployment figures that Eustace put up on his slide a little earlier.
Yeah.
So critical, and let's bring it back to proudly South African,
Definitely.
the importance, and I made this point too, it's also about creating sustainable job opportunities, which is what you've done. Continue.
Which is what we've done.
Yeah.
You know, and since for the past 7 years, we've been sustaining those 300 indirect jobs at Cape Mohe in Cape Town. And then we hit another hurdle immediately after that, because now we have the money, we have the brand, we have the stock and everything, but how do we get the product to the customer? And because I was still going with the romantic idea of being next to my childhood heroes, Tom Ford, Tommy Hilfiger, and Ralph Lauren, we decided to partner up with Starter Fords before they closed down in 2015. But there was a mismatch because the audience at Starter Fords was not the audience we were communicating with on mainstream media and social media.
I could have told you that. Yeah. Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But remember, I was still going the romantic idea of going with these guys, because before that journey, I'd go window shopping at Starter Fords with my mom. So me being there was like, I've made it.
Okay, a couple of things. Is your mom still an investor in the business?
Definitely.
Okay, and she's got her 70 Rand back times lots. Okay.
I retired my mom beginning of the year when she
Right.
turned 50.
Right. You're a millionaire now?
I'm a millionaire now.
Okay, and what's the future?
The future of Skinny Socks, listen, I want to continue surprising the consumer with our moves. Nobody knew that in 2020 we will be producing apparel. Nobody knew that in 2020 we'll be building our flagship store. So for now, I'd like to say to you, Skinny Socks is a beautiful story that's unfolding right in front of our eyes, and keep on watching the movie.
Okay, I love your story, and I just think it's so emblematic of proudly South African. And if you can do it, lots of other people can do it. What's the one big lesson that you've learned? You're talking to lots of young entrepreneurs here. What's the one big lesson that you've learned?
The one biggest lesson I've learned is to, just like the NBA and football and anything else, business is a sport. And if you happen not to enjoy the sport and train yourself, you're not going to win.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food, oh my God, I usually make this every morning: toast, apple, egg, tomato.
Do you like spicy food?
Yes, I do.
How much do you like spicy food?
Very XXXX hot.
Do you know who you're sitting next to? Have you met each other yet?
I know
Okay.
she makes,
Ipeling Matloko, that's what we call in our business a segue into the next conversation. Before I introduce you, the fascinating story.
I am astonished.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking. And it's my first time.
There's your mic. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is it on?
Is it on, guys? Are we hearing?
Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, Jeremy, I'm quite fascinated and completely impressed. I mean, I've read about you, I've followed you on social media, and I told you earlier on when I meeting you that, it's great to meet the celebrity, but now hearing your story, I'm like, goodness gracious me, and you are so tiny, so young, yet you are.
He's not that tiny. He's skinny as poo. Yeah. Do you? I mean, socks are a unisex product, aren't they? Are you a lover of socks?
I am.
Okay.
I am. And I'm one of those people that actually do sleep with socks on, especially in
Thank
the
you.
winter.
Okay. But you take them off in the shower.
Of course.
All right. You are the executive marketing and sales at Makamisa Foods. You've got a presentation. Before we get to the presentation, just tell us your story very quickly. How did you get into this business?
So, I'm a marketer by profession. And I have actually, I think that it's also kind of embedded in us as millennials to just jump from one industry to the next. Me coming into the industry, I actually was in a ICT multinational. I have a huge love for marketing and PR and so on. So that is actually my introduction into the work environment. From there, moved into finance.
Sorry, I've fallen asleep. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Yes. Went to finance. I was in a cooperative where I was doing account management. So again, that's where now the sales aspect then came in, and I was introduced into the sales aspect, business-wise. Then moved into a much more boring, I think, in your perspective, finance sector. I was in fund management, where I did business development for a startup firm that is also Black-owned. They actually have been doing quite a lot in media. You may have know them in Bella Global.
But spicy food is a lot more fun, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You got two big products very quickly. What are they?
So we've got the Manhamisa relish,
Yeah.
as well as the Pele Pele.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to let you, we can pull your presentation up now.
Definitely.
And then you'll also, along with Eustace, you'll join our roundtable a little bit later on. So I'm going to give the floor to you. Iplang, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Let's get the presentation up, guys.
I'm tempted to clap for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Guys, are we going to get the presentation up this morning sometime, or is it?
We will come up to level 0.
Are we good? You know what I love about these events? I've done quite a few of these, and I realized early on that it has told me that technology is so powerful, and it has changed the way in which we do things like this. I don't think that we're necessarily going to go back to the big conferences and all of that in the future. But what the problem also is that it can be very debilitating sometimes, just in terms of the way in which
The dependence.
things happen, and you've got to ride with it. So maybe while we're fixing this, and I'm sure it'll come up in any moment, give us the history of the company that you're with now.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, you did ask earlier on how I came into the business and a bit about my background. So, just a little bit here, I love food. My teammates are forever teasing me about it. I love food. So, obviously, it just made sense to join, a startup company. Because, again, I'm very passionate about startups and making a difference and trying to also create sustainable jobs. It's not just about, being a part of an organization that's just going to be a fly by night, but it's about making a difference and building a legacy and corporations, large corporations, and that will turn into multinationals. And that is how I actually got into Makamisa, because that's actually where we are headed, and that is the, I'd say, journey that we are taking as an organization.
What does Makamisa mean?
It means the one that makes you open your mouth. It's a Zulu term. I, honestly speaking, I had never heard of the term Makamisa before. I'm Tswana. So my Zulu vocab is extremely limited. So apparently it's actually a term that is utilized quite often. I had no idea. I had never heard it before. Yes, so it basically means, that expression that you do when something very spicy for your mouth, you just kind of open your mouth to let the air in.
Yes.
Yes, so that's what
As the eyes are watering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes, that's what
I'm imagining, and I mean, your job is the sales and marketing side of it. I'm imagining to myself that it is a lot more difficult to take a boutique or an artisanal brand like yours when you're competing with big multinationals, particularly when it comes to distribution, when it comes to volume and that kind of thing. You've got to find your own niche. The marketing approach, I imagine, is very different.
Absolutely, it is. So just a bit here. We actually scaled up around 2 years ago. So we got funding from the DTI IDC, which enabled us to be able to build our manufacturing facility. So currently we do co-manufacturing obviously in the condiments space, and we also have a brand of products, which is the Makanisa line, the relish as well as the Bela, which we only have 2 at the moment. And getting retail space, the formal trade that is completely different, I must say. They do have ESD programs, however, they're not necessarily very welcoming and, enduring open armed welcome. Here we are trying to introduce
And the interesting thing with this is you're always fighting for shelf space, aren't you?
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Or even just trying to speak to a buyer. It's difficult. You would probably get ignored. You would have to maybe even speak to someone from Project SA to say, hey, for instance, I'm looking for someone from SCOR, would you like me to assist? And that's again why we're part of membership such as Project SA, so that they're able to assist us in terms of breaking down these doors and assisting us, from that perspective, that is. However, it is quite difficult. But again, we are a Gussie brand. So with that, we focus a lot on the informal trade, and that is where our core market is. With that as well, distribution has actually gotten quite more advanced within the formal trade, because the distribution channels now have become a bit more formalized. In terms of, you have a competitor to Goodfood, for instance, that would possibly own about 80% of the channels. So it's only one individual that you can possibly, speak to. However, it's a bit difficult also speaking to them, and you would try to also maybe go through the channel of speaking directly to the business owner. However, they're not so open armed in terms of you being a new brand. They don't know you, and building a market for yourself.
So how do you overcome that then?
We just literally hitting the ground,
Yeah.
literally going from store to store, from Chisanyama to Chisanyama, butchery to butchery, and just knocking on each door, providing samples, and presenting our product.
How do you make the case for differentiation though? Because you're in a market often where there's a lot of parity. Again, everyone talks about their secret sauces and all of that, but a chili sauce or a relish is a relish is a relish. You've got to find that differentiation. The differentiation that Spoo will tell you is it's creating the magic. What do you call it? It was the golden piece of string.
Orange string.
The golden orange string.
Yes.
You've got to find your golden orange string. How do you do that?
So besides our products being great tasting, we pride ourselves in being authentically African. In the market, there isn't this, in terms of the chili sauce matters. The market is saturated with a lot of Portuguese heritage sauces, as well as Mexican and so on, but there's nothing that is African in the market. So that is how we have truly kind of defined ourselves, as well as that's the market that we have created ourselves and trying to own.
Okay, all right. So how does African hot differ from Portuguese hot to South American hot? What if you're selling it to me as the owner of a Chisanyama, for instance? How are you selling that differently?
It's different flavors.
Yeah.
It's different flavors. I know for what South Africans have quite an amazing palate. Our food is amazing in taste. So our product is resemblant of that, right? In terms of one bite, which we'll get to experience much later on.
I'm very excited, I have to tell you. Yeah.
One bite literally is unpacking about
Yeah.
10 different layers of flavors in it.
Yeah.
It's not just you get the spiciness and then the hot. So it kind of unfolds and unpacks in your mouth, and yes.
Ipileng, I want to say something to you that in broadcasting, I always joke that the job is very, very easy until you hit turbulence. So I look at my job as a pilot of a 737. and I'd fly that to Cape Town and back all the time. And every once in a while, I hit turbulence, and that's when I earn my money. And what has just happened now, as we've been trying to get your presentation up, is we hit the turbulence. And you were the co-pilot, and you did a very, very good job. You really did. I think, again, I'll break the fourth wall here. Have you been watching them frantically trying to get this presentation going? It's been very funny. Are we good to go, guys? We're good to go. So I think of some of what you say will probably be a repeat,
Definitely.
but let's get going anyway, and let's see if this works.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours. Okay.
Move on to the next slide.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes, so as I mentioned, we are, an African and so on. So in terms of how we were birthed came about, in terms of the organization and what actually built the organization was this unique product that we call the relish. So it's a 2-generation-old family recipe. Our co-founder's family, Kizzy Bengomo, her dad, her dad's family owned the recipe basically, not transferred from generation to generation. Obviously, there were minor tweaks here and there to better suit the individual's taste preference and family and so on. So that's basically what got us where we are right now. So as you see here, as on my presentation, I say from Escort to Ekasi and now based in Zanzi, which is basically the journey that we are taking, because when the first time that this relish was created, which was in the backyard due to U'Anduwa Baba, Kunzile's father, they had no money in the house and she only had back for her to provide to her family. So she went to the garden and in her garden she's got onions, chilies, some spices in the kitchen cabinet. So what she did was she just went to the garden and plucked a few of those vegetables, put them all together in a pot, fried it a bit, added some lovely curry powders in there, spices, and created this amazing relish, which was then consumed for the first time that day, and it is consumed every single day thereafter. So basically, our relish is something that can be consumed with or without a meat product. So it's a sashebo, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very filling, it's delicious, it's the taste of the pudding, by the way.
Okay.
Yes, so we are a brand that actually focuses on providing high quality products, made with superior quality ingredients, and we are very mindful of our pricing as well. Again, like I mentioned, our main target market is township trade, and of course, we cannot get into the market and try to price a 350 gram jar of 60 rand. So we need to come in competitively. However, before we did scale up, our price points were quite high, I must admit. We're selling at about, for 250 gram jar, it was 50 bucks. So now that we do have the manufacturing facility and we have scaled up and we're able to actually put in the volume, get into the volumes game that is right now, we have lowered our prices substantially, and we've actually also increased the jar size too. So now you're getting 100 grams more of relish, but about 30% lower price on it. So, like I mentioned again, we are proudly and loudly African brand, and you can see throughout our brand, our heritage, our colors, and it's displayed across the brand actually. Products that we do have currently is mayonnaise, tomato sauce, sweet chili, which will be launched within the next 3 months. However, like I mentioned beforehand, we do have 2 products which are the Bella Bella and the relish, which are our core products, and those are the ones that actually are reminiscent of the Makamisa story and brand.
I like the strategic intent. Talk to us about that.
So with how Makamisa did come about, again, I mentioned the story about Gogo making this relish for her family, right? And feeding her family and providing nourishment and flavorful nourishment, that is. So that is our view as Makamisa, and that is where we would like to be at the center of the world on the continent. So being a condiments manufacturing company, this would obviously be the forms, being the relish. which can be utilized as a shisha or be it mayonnaise or tomato sauce, chili sauce, the likes. So we believe in family, in community, in friendships, and just unity and community. I think I did mention community. So that is what our product and our company is centered around, and how it was built, and that is what we want to carry on and carry out throughout the organization's journey.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, guys. Okay, so I think you've covered the story for us. Critical that a brand, and Sibusiso was saying exactly the same thing. You cannot succeed unless you're future looking. You've got to have a vision. It's often a very over-traded word in business, but unless you have a vision, it's pointless. So the preferred supplier of condiments with indigenous African herbs as our core ingredients. Pretty straightforward, isn't it? But it says a lot.
Very straightforward. However, it's very multi-layered. Our strategic intent is to be a part of every meal across the continent. Now, we, like I said, we are very proud of being very African, and you can see it, it's quite clear. However, what we would like to do as well, going forward, is we would like to find a herb that we can utilize across all our branded products that can provide that distinctive taste of Makanisa. You mentioned earlier on about what is a unique selling point. We do have one right now, but we're just trying to up it up a notch, whereby every product that you taste that is by Makanisa, you will, without even seeing the label or the packaging or anything, you will know from the smell, the taste, everything that is Makanisa. So that is what.
And you're still looking for that.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct. So for instance, it would be like moringa. It won't be moringa, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So that specific ingredient that can.
Not cannabis, though.
Pardon?
Not cannabis, though.
No. Well, the doors are closed.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting. So what you're also saying, and that is part of your vision, is that you're still looking for that elusive differentiator when it comes to a brand. It might not ever happen, though. You know that.
True, but one of our values is innovation. We believe in constant innovation, and that's just across the board, not just from a product development perspective, but innovating, from the brand perspective, from across all business units, as well as just wholly as an organization, but also evolving and kind of being ahead of the curve and then leading the market. That's where we actually see ourselves, kind of leading the pack, a bit there. So I think right here on the money in terms of once we do find that specific indigenous African herb.
Yeah. Oh, I'll be very interested to know when you found that. Okay, that's the vision. Let's move on.
So again, I think we did touch a bit on this in terms of what the future looks like for Makanisa, and that is through finding that specific indigenous herb that can be utilized across all our.
And once you've done that, then it's a question of scalability, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah.
And now, speaking to scalability, again, this specific herb is something that, and this is why it's taking so long to find it, because we need to find a herb that is scalable. So it's sustainable throughout, all 4 seasons, and that even if we find we only utilizing a strand of it, that within the next 10 years, we still will be able to utilize it across all our products. We are growing, so imagine if we're doing 10 million volumes in a year, we still need that specific ingredient to still be available for us. So that is the trick to it.
All right.
Can we move to the next slide?
Let's move on.
So here I wanted to talk a bit about our brand. So we rebranded recently, and we wanted to go for a look that is very modern and current, very gassy, chic, basically. So incorporating a lot of, the Bantola culture, gassy culture, Afro chicness, and so on. So with that, we actually did so much research in regards to how the brand's going to look going forward. We went as far as even looking at Idema. Idema is, the drawings which the Basotho people utilize. But again, Idima is not only found within the Basotho culture, it's also found within the Ndebele culture, whereby, with the hats, that those paintings.
Yeah, I mean, that's also, you've got to be culturally diplomatic in South Africa, and there's a lot of risk attached to that.
True,
You've got, you could get it right in one respect and offend somebody else.
True,
Yeah.
but we actually realized during this research that there is such a huge common trend across all different cultures, South African cultures, be it from a color perspective,
Yeah.
from historical method of communication, how the Zulu people used to utilize the beads, and how even the Didema is also found in that, because it was not necessarily words, but kind of patterns and lines and so on. That is also going back to the Basothos, the Ndebeles, Botswana in some way as well. So there's actually quite a lot of commonalities across all the different South African cultures. But again, what we wanted to utilize as well is, colloquial terms to name our products. So we didn't just want to make it, very traditional. We didn't want to look kind of archaic, but also bring in a bit of, the more current, gassy vibe to it. And that is how we also came to naming our products, these very unique product names.
Can we move on?
Please.
Yeah.
So, as you see, they very unique, weird-looking names, but not necessarily it's terms that you actually are very used to. The Makamisa relish, the mild, we've got the Nyana. So Nyana again is a term that is utilized by the Tswana Basotho people that means a little bit, Bikinyana.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So how we actually came about this was we were trying to describe the taste and the heat flavor that you were going to get within each bottle. Hence, you've got the Nyana, the Nga. So again, Nga is more from the Afrikaans cultural clan, but everyone utilizes it. So as South Africans, we utilize Nga as, something that's nice. It's pashash, ishapo. So for us, medium is just ishapo, estele, basically.
But it's just a little edgier than the previous one. And now let's get to the one that.
And it builds up as it goes. It builds up.
And then you're going to blow the roof off our mouths with this
And then you've got gel.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce the R, so apologies for that.
Jar.
There we go.
But that's because that's indicating a bit of pain as well. Jar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
absolutely. So,
Okay.
I mean, you won't experience pain eating a relish.
No, but you know what I'm talking about, yeah.
No, of
A
course.
certain amount of oral discomfort.
Sounds very nice.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, so that
That's
is
why
the
I'm
way.
not in marketing, yeah? All right.
So that is the route that we chose to go in terms of naming our products.
Yeah.
And then we've also got a fourth product line, which we will be launching second half of next year.
Right.
And that one is extra hot. So that one we call Ayeye. So of course that already, it's just warning
If you don't say it
warning
with
from
enough
afar.
passion, you've got to say it. Oh, yeah.
It's
yeah.
in the face, man.
All right. Ipelang, again, we had some technical difficulties in the
Yes,
beginning.
yes.
I'm going to move you along a little bit. So let's move on to the next slide.
Okay, here I
Yeah.
just wanted to show you just, the different commonalities in
Yeah.
terms of colors and so on, but we can move on. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that is our entire product line. So here you see also the Pele Pele sauce. Again, Pele Pele is a Zulu term for peri peri.
Yeah.
Going back to, again, keeping that African heritage and cultural ethnicity to it. I think we can skip this. just
Okay,
for
we're
sake
not
of
going to go
time.
through the whole manifesto, but now this is important.
into the
And
crux
I
of
want
it.
I want to dwell a little bit on this because this is important to our audience. Is that
Yes.
the way in which brands have had to navigate in the past 8 months has been completely different. So walk us through very quickly what you've had to do.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we have started scaling up in terms of setting up our manufacturing facility. So that actually took place during the year of 2019. We commissioned the plant in November, however, signed off the plant in January. So obviously, in terms of from a planning perspective and timeline, from a sales pipeline perspective, we were well on our way to being all right
And
right
then
now.
the world got sick. Yeah.
Thank you. Funny enough, 2 weeks before, well, 2 weeks after the president did announce the National Disaster Management Act, we were actually planned to have our plant launch on the 6th of April. So literally 2 weeks before our event, we had to just shut everything down.
Right.
And again, this came with multiple, implications to
So
it.
the sales pipeline, as the slide says, is interrupted. Let's move on to the next one. What was the upshot of that then?
So basically halted, standstill. I mentioned here as well that our main client was gravely affected as they are in the food and beverages industry. That is actually Famous Brands, that is largely in the on-trade
Right.
industry, and they were not operating at all. So you can imagine them being our clients from February and us being a new manufacturing facility and ramping up
No, I mean,
volumes.
the domino or the knock-on effect is very obvious.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You went from producing, used to producing batches every, I'd say 3 days in a week to nothing, shut down completely.
Another slide?
So here I just want to, you had, the bad that happened during COVID, but again, there was a bit of good that did happen during COVID. We did have our first production for our Makamisa relish line, and we had been in discussions with the OBC group or OBC Chicken Group from November of last year, and they had showed their interest in listing our products. So during the pandemic, they were very confident in us in saying, we know your situation right now. Obviously, financially, COVID has also, knocked you down quite a notch. However, we believe in the brand. We have bought into your story, and we actually see value in your product and your brand. So we want to list you. We do know that times right now are kind of, shaky and undetermined right now. However, we did actually have our first sales order with our branded products through OBC. And again, moving over to the sales pipeline, as it stands right now, being in level 1, we were able to, I think a month ago, we were able to sign the biggest food services company in the country, which is the Impact Group, and they fall under the Teba
It's
Group.
what the industry would call green shoots, so things are starting to happen.
Yes.
Let's get
so
the next slide
finally,
up.
things are starting to look good.
Okay. And
So-
now what are we going to see now?
This video here is just again touching on to OBC and the support as well as they buy into our brand. They actually have,
Whether you like your food flaming hot,
the sound was off. So they have centered their campaigns around our brand, which was amazing. And this for us was actually our initial advert. So OBC created our first advert as Makamisa, and it is amazing and impeccable. But again, OBC is a proudly SA member as well. So it's great to see that, platforms like this are able to bring benefit as well as bring together collaboration. As
Guys, are we
mentioned
going to see the video
earlier
or are we
on.
having difficulties here? Otherwise, I'm going to move on in the interest of time. No, we're not going to.
Is it not working?
It's not going to work. I'm not
Okay.
going to apologize for it. We're all in this together.
It
It
happens.
is what it is. No, it's no one's fault. So let's move on to the last slide then, if we can. So, okay, you've explained to us about the partnership with OBC. So let's move on from that. Okay, so
where to from now?
The future, yeah.
Next slide, please. So this was more as kind of showing from a branded perspective that again, we are a new brand, a new company. We're still trying to gain market share. We're still trying to create market awareness and visibility, which we are currently doing right now. So this is more of a overview of what's to come in the future. You'll be seeing more of Makamisa online as well as in stores. We are going to basically take over the market and literally show that we loudly African in your face. And
I'm going to conclude it now, but I'm going to raise 2 points from that slide that I'm seeing
Okay.
in front of me. One is agility, okay, and never before have brands had to be more agile now, and you have to maintain relevancy.
Oh,
You've got to
absolutely.
keep reinforcing to people that your brand is important in their lives, that it's relevant, and that also innovation is good, but I would also add one thing to that, and that you've got to be seen to be doing good for your community and for your
Yes.
customers.
Yes.
Because there's a whole new reinforced movement now about something they call brand altruism, where you've got to be working for the greater good of your consumers, because if you're not, they're going to move to a brand that is, because more than ever, we are living in a time now of heightened compassion, which is absolutely critical. Guys, just in terms of the slides, I'm happy that we've got the gist of it. Are we able to move on to our next speaker? We are able to do that. Guys, you're going to stick around because we're going to have a little roundtable discussion afterwards. I want to try and pull all of this together. Ipoleng, sorry about that, but it is what it is.
Fine.
And I think that we've got the brand story, and we've got a very good understanding of a young, proud local brand that is making great strides. And I wish you nothing but success. As I said at the beginning of this conversation, it's brands like yours, local, proudly South African brands that are making a difference. And the most important thing is that you're creating jobs for people, which is absolutely vital. And I think that really is important. We're going to roll some tape now for you as our webinar continues. And I'm going to introduce you to Lee Tobin from an organization called Alphabet Social. She's the founder of this, and she is a marketing expert as we try and pull all of this together again to give you some valuable lessons and some takeaways. Once we've heard from Lee, I'll return and we'll wrap it up with a 15-minute roundtable. But let's roll the tape with Lee Tobin.
Hello, my name is Lee Tobin from Alphabet Social. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here and to share with you a little bit about how to remain relevant with your brand at this time and grow your brand online. Alphabet Social is a small business marketing consultancy, and we specialize in social media and performance marketing to help small business build their revenue online. We also run a series of courses and coaching to get entrepreneurs and small business owners incredibly confident in building their brand and using the incredible social media tools available to them. We're based in Stellenbosch in the Western Cape. We serve customers all over South Africa and beyond. So I'm very excited to share a little bit today to hopefully help you gain a bit of confidence and spark some ideas on how you can really build your business at this time. I know it's been a very challenging time for a lot of business owners, and you're probably keen to learn how you can adjust and adapt to this crazy new normal that we're living in. The good news is that there are many small businesses that we work with that are still seeing very strong results. There's been a real shift and kind of acceleration in people's adoption of online, and particularly with e-commerce that we've seen. So although there have been many challenges, we are also seeing many opportunities for brands. So hopefully I can shed a bit of light on those opportunities today and how you can take advantage of them. So basically, I've got 5 tips to share with you, and I'm going to go through them one by one over the next 20 minutes or so. And if you have any questions at all, you're welcome to connect with me on Instagram, DM, that's where I'm most active. Otherwise, you're welcome to email us at the address below if you're interested in taking one of our courses or just chatting to us about how you can expand and grow your business online. I encourage you to also follow us on Instagram because we share a lot of tips and tricks and videos on things are always changing in the online space, so we're constantly keeping an eye on trends and things that we see are working and sharing them with that community on Instagram. So give us a follow at Alphabet Social, and we can keep the conversation going beyond this talk. But without further ado, let's get stuck into the 5 things that I want to share with you today. Number 1 is to reassess your product market fit. So it's no secret that a lot has changed since February or March this year. And with that, our behavior as consumers has changed fundamentally as well. So we're spending a lot more time at home. We're social distancing. We're not going out, into physical stores as much as we used to. Our needs have changed. A lot of us are homeschool or dealing with having to homeschool children, learn online, run our businesses online. So my first piece of advice to you as a business owner is to stop and reflect on the product or service that you provide, and reflect on your target audience and just see, is there still a need there that needs to be fulfilled, or has that changed? So I want to actually chat to you a few examples. I think there's a few scenarios. So you either might find that, yes, there's still a need for your product, and the demand for your product may have actually surged as a result of the pandemic, which would be a good scenario. Some examples might be if you're in the kind of hand sanitizer or cleaning space, or in the online tutorial space, or even in like my own business, digital marketing, there's actually been a surge in demand for those types of services. On the flip side, if you obviously run a restaurant and or are an event caterer or an event organizer, there's been a really negative effect. So the first thing, as I mentioned, was to stop and reassess if there is still a demand or a need for your business. And if the answer to that is no, then you need to look at adjusting either your product or service, or you need to look at reaching out to new potential customers that might be interested in your product or service. So one example that I found was who did a great job at very quickly pivoting their business when they found there was no longer a need for what they were currently delivering, is a business called Granadilla Swim. So Granadilla Swim, traditionally, as the name suggests, sell locally made swimwear and resort wear to mostly foreigners visiting South Africa. So with the start of COVID, obviously there are a lot less travelers to South Africa, and we were going into the winter season. So Granadilla Swim had this big social media following and customer base who no longer needed what they had to sell. So they decided to actually look at their customer base and what do they need right now, and decided to launch a completely different business under the same brand, and that was delivering veg boxes and food to people's doors. And they launched Granadilla Eats. And it was a huge success. And that is just an example of reassessing your market and your product and deciding if there is still a fit there. Another example of a product or service that existed and suddenly had another surge in demand were, for example, pineapples, when everyone was creating pineapple beer during the alcohol lockdown, hand sanitizer. So basically my message to you is make sure, don't flog a dead horse. If there's no longer a need for what you're providing, it may be tricky, it may be challenging, but my advice to you is to make sure that there is still a need and a demand for your product. And if not, you need to pivot and you need to adjust that so there is a demand. You can have the best marketing in the world. You can spend all your budget on fancy social media strategies. But if there isn't a basic need for what you have to offer, it's going to be very challenging to get results. So that is my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to locate and really research your target audience and their behavior online. So once you have a product or service that you know there is a demand for, it's all about finding the right people who are really going to be interested. The digital world is a vast, vast space. There's over 1 billion Instagram users, 2 billion Facebook users. So if you can't really locate your audience, you're going to be wasting a lot of time with your message falling on deaf ears or reaching people who might not be interested, which can be very demoralizing as you won't be getting the results that you need to get. So how do you locate your target audience? Well, firstly, you need to research. And how can you research? Well, you can go onto the various social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter, and try and get a sense of where your audience is hanging out. You can speak to your target audience. So if you have an email database or you have an existing social media following, you can ask them, where do you spend most of your time online? Or you might just have an innate sense or an understanding of where they're spending most of their time. Once you find out where they're hanging out and what platforms they're using, then it's all about creating content that is going to be really interesting to them and relevant to them. You want to research their pain points, why it is that they would use your product or service, why would they be motivated to buy from you, and really speak to those pain points so that they can relate to the content that you have, that you can provide. And make sure that your content's not boring, it's entertaining, it's educational, it's informative, so that they love learning and hearing from your brand, that your content provides some kind of value, and that is going to nurture them so that they actually eventually want to buy from you. So speak to your customers, find out what their interests are, find out where they're hanging out online, find out how they shop online, what other brands that they, what the other brands that they buy from, and that will really help to solidify your approach and where you should be spending most of your online efforts. My third tip is to get your online house in order. Okay, so this is really important, and that is to analyze and look at your online brand and how you're presenting yourself to the world in an online format, from social media to your website to your mobile site. If you have an app, or just making sure, first things first, that there's brand consistency there. So your brand colors, your fonts, your images all look really professional and are consistent, and there's a really common thread running through them. And then also the various touch points. So making sure if you've got an Instagram account or a Facebook account, that your logo is well presented, that your bio, your description clearly tells people what it is you offer and how they can shop from you and what the call to action is. What are you asking them to do? Then moving over to your website, going through the process yourself and making sure that it's really easy to find information on your site, that your site loads really fast. That's a really important thing. A lot of websites have very large image files on them and they load really slowly, and you only have a split second to get that customer's attention and to hook them in. So if your site loads really slowly, you're going to lose them in an instant. So check your site load speed, and very important, look at your website on a mobile phone. Most of the time, we design our sites on a desktop and forget that 90 to 99% of our traffic is actually coming from mobile. So making sure that you're going through your site on mobile, making sure that it's easy to use. And if you are an online store or an e-commerce store, going through the step-by-step process and making sure you're not losing people, or people are not dropping off along the way because of small errors or mistakes that you've overlooked. So get your online house in order, making sure your brand is consistent, making sure your online, your social media profiles look really professional and on brand, and making sure that your website is set up for success. If you don't have the skills yourself to do that, then I encourage you to work with a developer or a designer to make sure that you have turned over every possible stone on your website and make sure that it's all running smoothly. Then if you are an e-commerce store owner, looking at integrating your catalog with Facebook to make sure you can make use and optimize the use of Facebook Shop and Instagram Shop to drive more sales online. So that is my third tip: get your online house in order. Number 4 is attract your ideal customers. So now we've gone through the fact that you need to define a need or assess the need in the market that you can fill, and then locating your audience online and figuring out where they hang out, and then getting your online brand and your online house in order. Once you've done those steps, it's time to start attracting those ideal customers. There's no point putting amazing content out there until you actually have an audience to share it with. So posting on your Instagram or your Facebook or your LinkedIn account isn't necessarily going to grow your following. You're just going to be preaching to the same group of people over and over. And over time, it's becoming more and more difficult to reach a sizable audience organically. So without paying on anything on ads to reach those audiences. So some of my favorite ways to reach audiences organically is to collaborate with other brands and influencers and other people who have a following, and the people that are following them are the kinds of people you want to attract to your business. So do some research and find either some brands who have followers that you would like to attract, or people or influencers, and approach them and partner with them either through a competition or a brand partnership. That is one of the best ways to grow your following online. Another great way is to use hashtags and put content out there that the algorithm is going to promote to new people. So video content using new tools like Instagram stories and Instagram reels and Facebook Live and Instagram Live, that is going to help expand your reach. Another tip is to be consistent with your content. So if you're posting consistently 3 to 4 times a week, you're much more likely to grow an audience than if you just post erratically, sort of once every couple of weeks or once a month. So implement tactics to grow organically. And then once you're producing quality content on a consistent basis, invest in paid ads. So invest in paid ads on Facebook and Instagram and retarget your current organic audience with a more solid call to action. So shop now or buy now or special offer. You want to really nurture your audience through your content. So getting them to building brand trust, putting valuable content out there that they really engage with, and then using paid ads to retarget them with a sales message and getting them over the line to buy from you. So that is one of the proven ways that we have used over and over again to grow online revenue in a nutshell. So start attracting those followers, start growing your following through a combination of organic and paid tactics. And if you keep doing that consistently, you will see growth, and you will see growth in online revenue. Obviously, bearing in mind that you need to have that product market fit and be fulfilling a need. You need to have your online house in order, and you need to know where your ideal audience are hanging out. My 5th and final tip is consistently deliver value. So now you've got people attracted to your account, following your account. The goal here is to now consistently deliver content that they love. Deliver value, over-deliver on value. Teach them about your product or service. Teach them a new skill, entertain them, make them laugh. We all on social media, not to be overwhelmed with advertising and be sold to. We're on social media to be entertained, to find something interesting, to learn, to improve our knowledge, to connect with other people. So consistently deliver value and really generate a sense of community around your brand. Chat. Some of the best conversions happen in Instagram DM sometimes when you're chatting with a potential or a prospective customer. Encourage that two-way conversation. It's called social media for a reason. It's meant to be social. And not only to build brand trust, but by building engagement on your platforms and getting those likes and those comments and those shares and those saves and those indicators of engagement in a social media context, you're actually signaling to this algorithm, which is this machine which decides what we see in our social media feeds, that your brand content is of value to your audience. So you really want to encourage that action, that engagement on your content. And how you do that is to create content that really resonates with your ideal customers, that they relate to, that they really want to share with their friends and family on their platforms, whether it be a quote or a meme or a visual or a video or a tutorial, but really identifying what it is that they're interested in and what they respond well to in a social media context, and designing your content strategy or your social media content strategy around that. That is really going to deliver that growth. And then, as I said in the previous tip, using that organic engagement to then retarget those people with a sales message when they are ready for it. No one is going to buy from a brand that they don't know. So use your content strategy to build awareness, to build trust around your brand, and to really encourage that engagement and that social media conversation around your brand. And be authentic, be human, don't be too detached and corporate. We're living in a very different world than we were living in even 5, 7, 10 years ago. the days of perfectly curated, polished ads being designed for months and months on end before going out to the market are over. It's now a constant cycle of content creation. The more real, the more authentic you can make it, the more likely people will connect with it. Put a human face to your brand. Don't just show product images. People love to see other people. So show the people on your team, share stories, share the layers behind your business. That's going to help people connect with you on a deeper level and really build trust around your brand and help to ultimately drive to that very important conversion, which is where the sales happen and the magic happens. So just to recap, in case you missed any of the important steps, the first thing we talked about was check your product market fit. Now, so much has changed in the last 6 to 8 months that it's important to reassess your audience and the product or service you deliver and see whether it's necessary to slightly adapt it for the current climate that we're in, if you need a complete pivot or a complete change, or if you just need to tweak 1 or 2 things to make sure that you are serving your market and there is a need that you're fulfilling. The second tip was to locate your audience and to actually research your audience online. Figure out where they're hanging out, what social media platforms they're using, what content they're engaging with. Really important to have a deep knowledge and understanding of your ideal customer and really nail down that niche that it is that you're serving, that niche that you're serving. The third thing was to get your online house in order, to make sure that that user journey online is really excellent, that has no barriers to the sales process and is a really smooth journey for your ideal customer to go through, all the way from becoming aware of your brand to following you on social, all the way through to actually purchasing your product or service. Make sure that it's a slick process and that it's very user-friendly and you'll be on your way to success. The fourth thing I spoke about was to how to attract your ideal customer, to use a combination of organic tactics and paid tactics to attract those ideal customers to your brand online. And then the fifth and final tip was to serve valuable content and to really engage and get that social community vibe going around your brand consistently, and that will set you up for success. So that's all I could fit into this 20-minute presentation. I could keep on speaking for days about this. I'm really passionate about helping small businesses grow and thrive online. If you'd like to learn more, you can head to alphabetsocial.co.za. I actually offer a full 4-week course for small business owners to help them gain the confidence and clarity to grow their business online, and that will be running again soon, so you can join the waitlist. Or, as I said at the beginning of this chat, you're welcome to DM me on Instagram and connect with us that way. And yeah, we're always throwing up and serving lessons and knowledge around how you can adapt and grow your business online. So I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much to Proudly South Africa for having me. And yeah, I hope to connect with you again online. Bye for now.
And that is Lee Tobin, everybody, the founder from Alphabet Social. I found those 5 points that she raised very interesting and very instructive. But of those 5 points, I would suggest to you that the most important one was the final point. It's about creating content that is relevant, authentic, that resonates, because we live in such a crowded space right now. It's difficult to push your brand message through. So when you're thinking in terms of content, and particularly for proudly South African brands, that's the thing that you've really got to focus on. We're drawing to the end of this. I am going to wrap it up and reintroduce my 2 live guests today. Sibusiso Ngwenya, Senior Strategist, Skinny Spoo Socks, along with Ipeleng Matloko, who is the Head of Marketing and Sales at Makamisa Foods, as we try to just put a cap on what we've learned today. Spoo, back to you if I can. Something we didn't touch on in our very energetic conversation earlier today. You've made mistakes. You have to have made mistakes. Give me a mistake that you've made and how you fixed it.
Whoa, a mistake I made was a financial mistake. Just to give you background, Jeremy, I I was 21 and everything happened like this. I got everything at a go. You understand? And the biggest thing was we got a lot of money coming in, you know. A small mistake such as painting this space, getting 3 quotations and looking at them and renegotiating. So you multiply that by this one job and the other and the supplier and this and that. That's how really I got to make a lot of financial mistakes. And you multiply
You
that by
wasted
3.
money, in other words, by
Tons of
not
money.
paying close attention
By not paying close attention
to the minutiae, to the little stuff.
Yeah, such a tiny thing as comparing codes. That's it. Just compare the codes and go for the best guy and the best price.
During the pandemic, and you illustrated to us in your presentation the difficulties that you've had. You were about to really sort of pushing production with a plant that was all put on hold. But from a marketing and sales perspective, where have you stumbled?
So, on my end, it's a matter of, it is crazy time that, no one necessarily didn't know what to do, how to do things, how to go about it, and so on. We in food manufacturing, so the best way for a consumer to experience food is through tasting it. So obviously, with the social distancing and so on, we actually had to kind of halt in terms of our plans from an in-store promotional perspective and being a bit more on the ground in relation to OBC, that is just for one. And we only started initiating that in September. So obviously, we produced in May, and now you've got about 3 months, whereby you kind of, not necessarily in a standstill, but things are just moving at a extremely slow pace.
And did you find that you were learning things on the fly, that it was, every day would present a new difficulty, which you would then have to come up with an innovative solution, something that hadn't been done before?
Absolutely, all the time.
That is stressful.
Extremely so.
Yeah.
Extremely so. But also, trying to also maintain relevancy, as you mentioned. It is one thing that we did notice quite a lot was we saw a lot of foodies kind of coming up during the pandemic. And I think the reason for that was because, we live in an age whereby you utilize your phone a lot. Content creating and then snapping is just very natural to everyone. So as a company, and if you don't get on board that quickly to try and engage much quicker with your audience, or again, maintain relevancy, that's where, I think we also kind of missed the mark a bit there too, not getting to it that quick.
Has it been more difficult to maintain brand relevancy in your world, given that maybe we haven't paid or been forced to pay that much attention to fashion items? We've all been at home. Mm-hmm. Your brand purpose surely has changed. Your fight for relevancy, has it become more difficult?
I'm happy that you're mentioning fight, I'm one person who's understood from day one that I'm in a fight and I am willing to do anything to get people's attention so that I can convert that attention into money. I'm willing to change my hair color. I'm willing to put my logo everywhere. But the one thing that we did, which was very special, was to understand that there's a huge difference between marketing and content creation, which is why we developed a department to specifically deal with developing content that is going to be compelling and content that is going to keep people engaged. So that we can
how do you do that in the world of socks?
How do you do that in the world of socks?
Yeah.
You keep on creating stories. We got script writers. So we are producing a lot of content that is now going to go on social media.
All right, guys, again, I'm going to break this fourth wall again. How are we doing for time here? And okay, and is Happy standing by, and she's ready to go. So we've got about 4 minutes to wrap this up. Okay. So the other thing is, and I keep wanting to bring this back to brand relevancy, if I can say, if I can come back to you. A lot of what brands have experienced in the past 8 months is desperation. In order to remain relevant, you've got to maintain a degree of optimism. You talk about the fight. It is a
Yeah,
fight, but
yeah.
you've got to be optimistic. You've got to be able to say, well, we are going to come through this. How have you, as a marketing person, done that externally to your stakeholders?
Geez. So
Wasn't expecting that question.
threw me for a loop, Jeremy. Thank you.
So let me break it down for you. You've gone out to customers. You've gone out to people who have themselves are battling with their own businesses. And what you've had to do is you've had to say to them, we're here for you. We have solutions. We want you to continue being our partners. If that's true, which I think it is, how have you had to have those conversations with people? Because it's in having those conversations that you remain relevant as a brand.
Correct. For us, I think it is more prevalent within the co-manufacturing side
Yeah.
of things versus the branded side of things, whereby like I mentioned to you, Famous Brands, for one, they took quite a huge knock in terms of them not trading at all for about, I think, 4 months.
It was devastating. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And then Impact as well, quite affected too, because they're in food services too. So it was more of, we are here with you guys, walking the journey with you guys. And as a startup, yes, we are trying to obviously, retain your business and so on, but it's more of a matter of what do you need that we can help you with? And also trying to establish before they even realized what it is that they needed, and kind of coming to them and offering them that service before they even realized that, oh, we actually need this kind of product or service.
Don't go so fast. That's important because that's called preemptive thinking.
Yes.
And unless you can start forecasting with a great deal of accuracy what needs are in that space, you're going to be left behind. But often people aren't necessarily receptive to that message because you're telling them things they might not like.
True, but you have to be quite strategic in it, in the sense that you understand your customer very well and understand their pain points as well, and speaking to them, but also helping them kind of see, over the hill a bit, to say, we understand that, you were hit tremendously financially and so on, but this is where we see us leading this journey together and where we can get to, and kind of, big picture. However, also not forgetting the small details, because small details really matter.
Just a quick one from you, Spoo, before we finish. I am getting the wind-up signal. We're going to finish.
saw that.
We are
Saw
going to
that.
finish. We are going to finish now. In order to remain relevant, you also have to keep a close eye on your competitive set. What have you done in that respect?
Well, one thing that makes Skin Socks is our logo. You look at Louis Vuitton, you look at Gucci. A bag is a bag, but because it has that LV sign, that's what makes the brand. So what we did was to remain relevant was to reintroduce our logo. Now, our audience is used to our logo being only on the feet, but now our logo is on the pants. We've extended our product range to apparel. We've got formal wear, we've got sportswear and things like that. We've got a flagship store in Maboneng that people can now come and experience the brand itself, So to remain relevant, really, those are the things that we really wanted to do. We wanted to reintroduce the logo and the story differently.
If I said to you, you could meet either Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger,
Ralph Lauren.
or Ralph Lauren.
Ralph Lauren.
What did I say?
Huh?
Ralph Lauren. Or who was the other one? Tom Ford, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
It'd be Ralph Lauren you'd want to meet first.
Definitely. He epitomizes what making it in the world of fashion is.
Have you seen the documentary about it?
I've seen the documentary
brilliant.
about it over and over.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's a fantastic documentary. But this is not about Ralph Lauren. It's about the two of you. It's about you. Folks, you've blown me away. I love engaging with small brands.
Yeah.
Because as I said at the beginning of this conversation, you really are the backbone of this country. I wish you nothing but success. I really do. And I'm looking forward to, one day when you both list on the stock exchange.
Definitely.
Remember this old man here. All right.
Absolutely.
Folks, in conclusion, and I'm going to say we've had a couple of technical difficulties over the past 2 hours. It is what it is, okay? It's the way in which the world has changed, and I hope that we have surfed over them, and that the most important thing that I hope that you have derived today is valuable brand intelligence. There have been so many little nuggets of information. Take those learnings and try to apply them to your own brands. In conclusion, I am going to ask Happy Ngidi just to say a few closing words of thanks for us, Chief Officer Marketing and Communications at Proudly South African. And Happy, I am hoping fervently that you are with us.
I am right here, Jeremy.
There you go. One of the words of the year is unmute. And now you can go.
Thank you so much. What an amazing discussion that you had with all the guests. Thank you so much. You know, food for thought, a great sense of appreciation. You know, for our member companies that have shared their story here today. So much to take away and process from this session. So without further ado, mine is to say thank you to everybody. And so I'll start with you, Jeremy. But I'm not going to let you scot-free with that comment that you made when you opened up about the Richard Branson story. You said that, you know, we mustn't let our minds run away with us. I'm not sure if that was possible. I thought I'd just throw that in. But thank you so much, Jeremy. You remain a friend of the campaign. We truly appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your support at all times. We've known you for quite a long time. We really appreciate your contribution today and keeping things going and so flawlessly, and keeping the engagement going. We thank you. We can never thank you enough as Proudly South African. By the way, I'm a big fan of your work. You know, your thoughts around branding for as long as I've known you. You know, I'm always in awe of your how you process brand issues. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Skinny Sbu, the real hustler. I mean, who chases the president down the corridor at the convention center? Only Skinny Sbu can. And gets the president's attention. I mean, it takes us long hours and months to get the president's attention, but Skinny Sbu just walks up to him. Skinny Sbu, thank you so much for being a gracious host today, because we came, you know, you're live from your store, you know, where you are showcasing your funky socks, your signature socks. Thank you so much. I have much respect for your hustle. Ipeleng, thank you so much for your time representing Makhanyisa. I'm glad that, thank you for getting up, dressing up and showing up and sharing your fantastic story of how Makhanyisa has stayed afloat during this time in particular, and keep on keeping on, honestly. Thank you. And Lee Tobin, you know, who took us through the how to maximize and how to use social media and digital platforms and all of those at your disposal as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, you know, to ensure that you keep your brand as relevant as possible. Thank you so much to Lee. All the delegates online and those that are on site, the media, member companies, our stakeholders, our friends. Thank you. CEO Eustace Mashimbie, who was our first speaker today. Thank you so much for steering the ship in the right direction, even through difficult times, unprecedented times. We tried as a campaign to remain relevant through it all, and we have no sense of complacency. We still, you know, work just as hard to galvanize support, but to educate South Africans about the importance of buying local and supporting local in an effort to revitalize our economy as a people. Proudly South African SAA team, I refer to them as the A team, the events team, PR, IT, and branding. Thank you so much for a great work. And within closing, it's heartwarming to see how Makamisa and Skinny School Socks have tried, as members, have tried to navigate through this very, very difficult period. Even before COVID, we've seen, them work very, very hard to remain relevant and to make it really in business. And you did say earlier on, Jeremy, that it's been very turbulent, for many, many businesses, big and small. And it's really so heartwarming to see that these entrepreneurs in particular, have really, stood the test of time. And my personal analogy of this time, as somebody who will forever wear an entrepreneurial hat, but who also comes from a corporate environment, is that, what a boxing match this time has been. This pandemic has exposed us to. Many of us, or many businesses such as Skinny School, Socks, and Makamisa have, dealt with many uppercuts while they try to do their business and while they try to lift themselves up and to, come up again and continue with the work that they do. But then, while they were dealing with the uppercut, then there was a jab coming from the other direction. And while they were trying to survive the jab, then, there was at some point there was a complete TKO, technical knockout for both these businesses. But here they are today, proudly telling us their story of survival as businesses. And for that, we take our hats off for you. We respect your hustle. We celebrate you, and we keep endorsing your work and celebrating your work as Proudly South African. Thank you, everybody. And all of you that have joined us, we ask that you follow us on social media platforms just to see what other webinars we have lined up in an effort to help you to be able to run profitable businesses during this time and beyond. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeremy. Back to you. Thanks.
Happy, thank you very much indeed. I've just worked out that we are less than 60 days to go until Christmas. The festive season is starting. I would urge all of us to buy Proudly South African. The webinar's over. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for watching.